Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the inn. Today, an old god has returned from the depths, and he's looking shinier than usual. It's Mecha'Thun, a 10-cost 10/10 mech with the death rattle. If you have no cards in your deck, hand, and battlefield, destroy the enemy and a hero. So, you pretty much have to be in fatigue. This has to be the last card you play from your hand, which means your hand's empty. And when you play it on the field, there needs to be nothing on your side of the field. Yeah, this is going to be kind of tough, and this is... I'm not sure if this is a win condition per se, or a well-crap condition. I'm sure that will be people who build a lot of... who try to build a deck around him. I'm not really sure if this is a deck that you... Sure. Because there are a few ways to do it. You can't do it with Deathwing, but you could do it with Cataclysm. Oh no, you couldn't do it with Cataclysm.
If memory serves me correctly, maybe no.
No, because it would discard Mecha'Thun.
Well, if anything, if Mecha'Thun is on the board, and then you
because it's a death rattle, yeah. So you
Cataclysm.
You could do Cataclysm because it's a death rattle.
Yeah.
Cataclysm should work. So basically, you wait until you have Cataclysm in your hand. Keep it in your hand. You make sure that Mecha'Thun is last cards you put on the board, and then you play Cataclysm next turn. I mean, a lot of this is, since it's a 10-cost 10/10, a lot of this is it has to sit on the board, and you have to hope it doesn't get killed before you can pull it off. On the other hand, if you get this randomly or as it is summoned, it still is a 10-cost 10/10 mech. I don't think this is something you would run normally in a mech deck. Maybe you consider it as a well crap everything's gone down the crapper type card, or maybe you discover it and hold on to it just in case. I don't think the combo decks that try to pull off the Mecha'Thun win condition are really going to work. To be completely honest with you, I think that they fall about in line with the Ancient One type decks. It is something cool to kind of think about and maybe experiment with, but I do not think those Mecha'Thun type decks will work. I think Mecha'Thun will kind of shine as in suddenly he appears from Spiteful, or he randomly gets summoned, or you discover him, and you just have more of you just have more pressure because the 10-cost 10/10 that maybe you can buff. If you're Dr. Boom at the time, you get this randomly from his hero power. On the next turn, you play the 10-cost 10/10, run it into something, kill it, and just look at your opponent. They're going to try to be getting rid of it. Number one, because it's a 10/10, it's a big threat, and two, they might think maybe you're trying to set up the end for them, even though it's a big shiny distraction. So I don't think this is a card. I think that there'll be people who will be trying for the combo deck. I don't think that kind of deck will really work out. I don't think it's that viable. But I think if you randomly get this, and either from a hero power, or you discover it, or it gets summoned on your side of the board, I think this is just an incredibly strong 10/10 for 10. And I just think in mech decks that if you just randomly get it, you just go with it and go, okay, and just move. I think in that regards, I think it's solid. Not something you really put in your deck, but maybe something you get from another effect that makes it worthwhile.
If anything, someone is going to make a meme deck out of this. It's going to be like tier 3 or 4. Because somehow, some way, this flippin' works.
I look forward to seeing this. I would love to see someone pull this.
I figure someone may try it in the druid side of things, just kind of like spells and just things to stop their opponent from out aggroing them, gaining armor and things like that. And then when the time is properly done and properly right, you just go Mecha'Thun, innervate, and then naturalize. Just to be like, all right,
Yeah, Druid I know has a way to pull it off. Warlock I think has a way to pull it off. I mean, there are a lot of classes I think have ways to pull it off, but it would take a turn or two.
Yeah, Rogue could potentially do it as well in the wild side of things because, like, just I'm gonna assassinate my own Mecha'Thun after kind of like milling my whole deck, and then potentially just vomiting stuff on board. But
you can't assassinate an enemy minion.
Then we'll use Bladed Cthulhu on it. Just to, just hit it and kill it.
And then you have a Bladed Cthulhu on your side of the board, and you did not pull it off.
Damn!
It's the same reason why Deathwing does not work.
Somebody's gonna figure out a way to make Mecha'Thun work in Rogue, maybe. I don't know. At this point, it's just... Mecha'Thun is just such a meme card. I'm just going,
Hunter could... This would be hard to do, but if Mecha'Thun was one of the last 3 mechs in your deck... Like, if it was there's only 3 cards, and Mecha'Thun was one of the last 3, and the only card you had left in your hand was Clark, the Hunter legendary spell.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, if the rest of your board is killed off, that's the last thing in your hand. You know that everything else in your hand, everything else in your deck, or just there's like 3 or less cards, and all of the cards in your deck fits the requirements for the legendary spell. Play the legendary spell, it summons all the rest of the cards in your deck. They can go and attack, including Mecha'Thun, they go and attack the cards, then they all die, you win.
Man, it's bad when you figure it out for Hunter before, if anything, you figure it out.
But the problem is, like everything else, like especially for Hunter, it's so many circumstances that have to be done right.
Correctly.
It's like pretty much you're playing on an incredibly small random chance. And I just don't think it's going to happen that way. But there's a way that they could possibly do it.
And that's where the fun part comes in, is just figuring out how to make Mecha'Thun work. This thing is a meme card. Like, let's just outright say it. It is meme to the extreme. But having it off of Spiteful, having it crop up in a randomly generated Discover a Mech, it's really nice and really useful because it's big. But other than that, meme.
It's big and it essentially has taunt.
Okay. So, next up, we go to Necrium Vial. Necrium Vial is a 5-cost rogue epic. Its ability is trigger a friendly minion's death rattle twice. We're still seeing that archetype being pushed. I like it in a Jade style deck, but for 5 to basically have a one-shot of Baron Rivendare, not like even with prep. And just wasting a prep on this sort of thing. It's... Bulb, can you convince me otherwise?
It probably depends on the deck, what you have in it. I mean, and depending on the death rattle. Depending on the death rattle, it may be worth triggering a certain death rattle twice. It's not going to kill the minion, which means that it's going to trigger the death rattle twice, and you still have the death rattle minion on your board. So... I don't know. I mean, it does seem kind of expensive given that Play Dead is 1, and let me check something else out real quick. I want to see the Hunter, because Baron Rivendare is a 4-cost minion.
The Feigned Death is a 2-cost. Play Dead is 1.
Yeah, Play Dead is 1. Feigned Dead is for everything on the board. The minions that have this type of effect are either 4 or 5 cost, so it is similar to them. But the thing is, they have to sit on the on the board. So maybe it is worthwhile. I think I still would have preferred it to be maybe 4 mana or 5, but I don't think that the mana cost is too outrageous for the ability compared to the minions that it normally sits on. The fact that you can do this whenever you want. I do think I would have preferred to see it cheaper, maybe about 4 mana, but I don't think it's outrageous at 5 mana. I think maybe the right Death Rattle deck might consider this, but again, what are you leaving out for this spell, and is it worth it? This is a question that if you're playing it, if you do run Death Rattle Rogue, you're going to have to consider. So I'm going to leave that up to the Death Rattle Rogue players, because I do not, like I said, I don't think the price is outrageous, which means that it is a viable card, but you're going to have to answer the question, if I play this card, are there other cards I'm leaving out and would rather be playing? And I can't answer that. I think Necrium Blade is better than Necrium Vial. But I don't know. I really don't know.
We'll see.
Like I said, I think it's playable, but I don't know if it will get.
That's what I'm saying. We'll see.
Next up is Dreampetal Florist, which is a 7-cost 4/4 Druid minion with the effect at the end of your turn. Reduce the cost of a random minion in your hand by 7. This is powerful. I'm not going to say this is broken powerful. This is broken. And my problem with this card, I had a whole argument and discussion with Stukes in the Memers chat about this card. And my issue with this card is I think the effect is too powerful for an epic. I think if this was a legendary, I think the effect would be fine. But this card is essentially less than a legendary, which means you can put multiple copies in your deck, and it's better than Therissian or any other legendary that discounts things in your hand. Like I said, I think the effect is too powerful for this rarity. Not that it's too powerful for the game, but for this specific rarity, it's too powerful. I think if Dreampetal Florist was a legendary, I go, fine, this is going to see play, it's incredibly powerful, there you go. But for an epic, this is broken. This is absolutely broken. This should not have been printed. This is bad. This is probably going to get nerfed. And here's the difference. And I want to show you the difference between power level. It all revolves around at the end of your turn. This is a repeatable effect. This will happen over and over and over again. It's like Therissian, only it does a lot more. And it's not a legendary. And if this said Battle Cry, reduce the cost of a random minion in your hand by 7, I wouldn't mind. But the fact that it is a constant effect on a non-legend that is incredibly powerful, and in fact, like I said, it's broken powerful, on a non-legendary minion, I think is incredibly problematic. And I would not be surprised if this card gets nerfed.
Are you good, my good sir?
Yeah.
Alright. So first thing comes first. That Dollmaster Dorian plus the Juicy card combo makes Dreampetal Florist a even nuttier card. Because it's just, oh look, I'm gonna have this as a 1/1, and I have the 4/4 copy in my hand. There's also the idea of on turn 10, you just go, okay, I'm gonna play Drakari Enchanter, and I'm gonna play Dreampetal Florist. That effect of reducing a cost of a random minion in my hand by 7 goes off twice. It's disgusting. Absolutely bloody disgusting. And plus, you're trying to reduce the cost of a minion in your hand by 7! This makes it to where something like Melee Ghost costs 2. Like, I already was talking about how big Druid was gonna come back. And if anything, Dreampetal Florist just makes us even more bonkers in standard and or wild. So it's just like, you're sitting here, you're looking at this card, and you're just going, oh god, why? Because it is just boosted. Like, Therusian only had one tick, and that was everything in your hand got reduced by one. And that's all I want to play. You get to have 2 of this little ding-dong, and it reduces something by 7! Ah! Just... ah! I think if anything, Bob's right. This thing could potentially see the Nerf bat hit it around September, October.
And you know what? The sad part, Eddie, is all it really needs to be done to it to fix it is to change it from at the end of your turn to a battle cry. If you make that change, the card is fixed. It's still disgusting, but it's fixed.
Yeah. So, if anything, to the powers that be that may be listening out there, if this does get changed, this should be a battle cry. So, if anything, I'm going to scoot over to...
Also, to the powers that be, if you are listening, you really need to consider the power level of the effects you're putting on their cards and whether they are right for that rarity. This is an effect that should not be attached to anything less than a legendary. If you want a powerful end of turn effect, you put it on a legendary. If you're not putting on a legendary, then the effect needs to be a lot weaker. Powerful effects, no matter what, go on legendaries. I don't care if it's on a crappy legendary body. If this was a legendary minion that was 7 cost 4/4 with an effect, it still would have been powerful and it still would have been legendary worthy. Stats do not matter. It's the effect that's important for the legendary, and this effect is way too powerful for anything less.
And now that Bob's gotten that out of his system, now I'll scoot myself over to the Soularium. It's the 1-cost Warlock legendary spell. Draw 3 cards at the end of your turn, discard them. Just gonna come right out and say it right now, it's gonna be meta defining. Biggest reason being, for 1 mana, you draw 3 cards. 1 mana, 3. Just boom. If you're a zoo player in standard or wild, for that matter, this is incredibly powerful for you. On the standard side of things, it's just here. I'm going to play this towards my mid to late game. Draw 3, puke on the board, minions, and then hopefully that my plan doesn't backfire for, having too many minions in hand that are too large in price to be able to just throw them onto the board. In Wild, because of Dark Peddler being a thing, this thing can be discovered by it. So it's just... as far as its power level goes, because it's so strong and powerful. And again, I bounce back to standard now, because we already have a zoo deck that has kind of creeped up and creeped out towards the tail end of the Witchwood meta. That is really nice, really powerful right now. And this just adds to that. If, and this is a big if, people start to find ways to make it to where, with like Clutch Mothers of Us, you can make it to where it's only like a discard 2. and you get that quest from Journey to Ungoro to start kind of working in tandem together, the possibilities are bonkers and endless. So, Soularium, super powerful, super useful, definitely meta-defining, definitely gonna see play in Warlock. Bulb.
Oh, absolutely. There's a lot of people I think that are really extremely focused on the discard, going, "Oh, when are they going to learn?" Guys, it's draw 3 cards for 1. You're not going to play this card as soon as possible. You wait until later in the game when you're more than likely going to be able to play what you draw. See, the thing is, if you play the cards that you draw, you're not going to discard them. So that's your whole point. Is the Soularium is, I need to draw cards, and to play them, you play Soularium, and you try to play as many of those 3 cards as you possibly can. And basically, it's essentially draw 3 cards. Any that you don't use, you discard at the end of your turn. I mean, that's an incredibly powerful card, Eddie. Because if you can use all 3 of them, you don't discard any cards. You just drew 3 cards and used them.
That's why I said you
for
vomit it on the board.
For 1.
Yep, that's why I said you vomit it onto the board, and you're just like, 1 mana.
I mean,
draw 3. You don't tap
if you're
and take damage.
I mean, yeah, if you're like a control deck or a more mid-range deck or something like that, it isn't good because you may like discard your Death Knight or whatever. But this is essentially either a desperation play in those type of decks where you need to get what you need as quickly as possible. You need some answers or whatever. And so it's just 1 mana to just draw the rest, and you have a lot of mana to work with. Or you're playing this as a zoo deck where you can pretty much play whatever you draw. This is an incredibly strong card, and you're right, it is meta-defining.
Yeah, like this is straight up zoo deck fodder. There's no way around it.
Next up, we have Arcane Dynamo, which is a 6-cost 3/4 with the battle cry, discover a spell that costs 5 or more. This could be depending on the class. This could be incredibly strong. It's not gonna be strong in certain classes because of their spell pool, but I'm thinking classes like Mage, especially, this could be strong. And again, if you're searching for a very specific card because of your class pool, this is more likely to give it to you. Like for Priest, this is probably more likely to give you that answer card that you're looking for. And Mage, this is going to give you some very powerful control tools. I don't think Shaman uses this as much, because I don't think there's a lot of high-cost cards that they're going to be looking for. Same with Hunter. But I think that, depending on your deck, this can give you some answers. And, so yeah, depending on the deck, I think this could see play.
Honestly, I think this goes into the... Given this is a neutral, and it's great that it's a neutral, but if we saw this came out during the times of Mead Streets of Gadgetzan, this would have been a Cabal card. No questions asked. Because those 3 classes, being able to discover a spell that costs 5 or more is really powerful for them. So, like, I can potentially also see this being thrown Druid's way, because Druid also has some really strong 5 or more spells. And depending on what you want, for that matter, cough, Ultimate Infestation, cough, hack, if you're being a budget player, Arcane Dynamo is perfect for that. So, I think, realistically, if anything, this highly sees play in Arena, because it's really good there. As far as your standard and constructed goes, you may experiment with it, but at the end of the day, I think right now, with how refined and how fine-tuned people do their decks in constructed, this doesn't find a home right out the gate. Maybe later on someone will find, like, you know, go here's its home. But other than that, arena. I get to move on to Omega Mind. 2 cost, 2/3. Omega card for Shaman. Its battle cry is, if you have 10 mana crystals, your spells have lifesteal this turn. Okay. Like, it is Halaziel's Omega kind of thing? I mean, okay. Just ball.
I mean, I'm sure that you could find a use in Standard for Omega Mind. I think Omega Mind probably goes into more control-oriented control-oriented Shaman. I just don't know if I know, and I just don't think that Shaman has the tools or will be able to go that direction. In Standard, but I think if they do, I think you do include Omega Mind. But you need to have, since it's just for that turn, it'll be later in the game, and you need to have a plan when you play it to optimize the lifesteal, because you only get that turn. In Wild, I think there are more possibilities for this card, because I think that there are more tools that Shaman can work with. But I think this more than likely goes more in a control type Shaman, rather than one that is trying, like even Shaman that's trying to go, okay, can I pull some spells from Mecha'Thun, and it just doesn't work out, and then you've wasted the lifesteal. Next up, we have E.M.P. Operative, which is a 5-cost 3/3 with Battlecry, Destroy a Mech. Yeah, given that this is the mech expansion, and given that they were going with the huge magnetic minions with the, mechs that build off one another, let's be honest, we needed a tech card like this. This is a card we absolutely needed. I'm actually kind of glad we got it. I think the price is right. I think everything's right about this card, and given the direction I think the meta is heading, I think this is going to see play, and it's going to be a very popular tech.
My only beef with E.M.P. Operative, and this is the only beef that I have with it, mind you, is that it's an epic. Like, I had a beef with the Murloc card, where it was just like, here, I'm gonna eat your Murlocs, or Hungry Crab. Finally got the name of it. Hungry Crab was also an epic, and I'm just like, but it also got buff stats for it, so I can understand it being an epic. With E.M.P. Operative, I think it should have honestly been a rare, or at least a common, because it's just like, alright, destroy a mech on your battle cry. That's about the only beef I can have with it. Other than that, Bob, do you have a counterpoint here?
Well, I think that they wanted to make sure that there was a tech card for mechs, because mechs are going to be so prevalent, so they needed to have that out, so that people had more way to interact with the magnetic mechanic. But I also don't think that they didn't want it to be so common that basically it would make people not want to run mech decks in the first place. So I think that's why it's an epic.
I get it. I got you on that. If anything, it kind of, when you mention it in that vein, kind of reminds you of Skulking Geist in a sense, because Skulking Geist was the epic and it targeted 1-cost spells and things like that. So it's just like, all right, you've got me on that one, and you've convinced me. All right, cool beans. I get to scoot over to Void Analyst, 2-cost 2/2 demon for Warlock with the Death Rattle. Give all demons in your hand +1/+1. Demon Lock, potentially becoming a more prevalent and viable / apt thing. I would not complain about that, like, at all. Especially if they go the potential cruel route, and just like, you're cruel, and then you get all these big demons on board, and you're just like, ah ha 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 ha. But if anything, just just for just standard demons alone, like for this being in like a zoo type deck, it's not terrible. So I think this is a good card, and I do think it sees play. Bulb.
Well, you see, I watched that final stream. I saw the type of zoo kind of deck that they're looking for Warlock to kind of be running. The direction they're looking for Warlock. And having seen that, it's scary. Void Analyst is absolutely crucial, because to kind of give you an idea, because I'm not sure if you watched it, Eddie. Actually, you were. You're right there beside me. You were right there beside me.
I was about to say, if you remember, I was trying to watch it, but my internet kept going out.
They're kind of going for, which is funny, because with Priest's whole theme being cloning, which I don't think they really pulled off, Warlock's going this really weird, hand buffy, board cloning demon deck. And I watched all this and going, this is nuts. And the way that things are statted is nuts enough so that this is essentially a variation of Zoo. A very strong, I think, variation of Zoo. One of the things I pointed out with the Warlock Omega card, let me just pull up the name real quick, which is Omega Agent, was I said I felt that it belonged in a Zoo type deck. And given the direction they're going, oh, absolutely it does. And Void Analyst kind of gets things rolling. Number one, is a 2-cost 2/2 demon. The stats are good in the first place. And that's where I'll give all demons your hand +1/+1. Given the direction that this type of deck is wanting to go, with this type of Zoo deck is wanting to go, you absolutely wanted to die and buff the demons in your hand, because, oh my word, some of the disgusting things you can do once those demons are buffed is just, oh my word. Absolutely, I think this thing sees play. If players kind of give in and go the direction that Blizzard kind of built the deck, and I think that's probably going to be a deck recipe and kind of made, I think this is an incredibly meta-defining card. The potential Warlock archetype I saw kind of scares me and intrigues me at the same time. I'm not going to lie, and I think Void Analyst is going to be a key part of that deck. Next up, we have Seaforium Bomber, which is a 5-cost 5/5 with the battle cry, shuffle a bomb into your opponent's deck. When drawn, it explodes for 5 damage. I actually think this is very good. I think this is very strong. It's a 5-cost 5/5, normal stats. It puts a bomb in the deck, which does 5 damage when dealt. So yeah, it will deal 5 damage later on. You pretty much have guaranteed 5 damage later on in the game. You have a good stat minion on 5. Boom. I'm now going to contest the board. I have decent stats. I am probably going to get in at least one attack with this. I think this is a very good card. I think it's going to see play.
Did somebody say bomb? Yeah, might as well just go ahead and just drop it into your Shudderwalk decks as well.
Ooh. Play this alongside Augmented Elec. 2 bombs. Boom, boom.
Oh, goodness. Just, yeah, and like I said, if anything, Shudderwalk just already going infinite as it is, and just going, you know what, screw it, here's a bomb, here's another bomb, here's another bomb for you, and you're just sitting there, and you're just kind of like watching your opponent's face just go, It's like that bunny when you see freaking, in the Wreck-It Ralph 2 trailer, it wheeling out that pancake cart, and you just see the bunny's face go, oh god, why? So, if anything, I do think this sees play. It's a mini Iron Juggernaut. I'm already disgusted by the thought of Shudderwalk playing this card, and it's just like, you know what, I'm moving on. I'm going to Luna's Pocket Galaxy. It's the 7-cost mage legendary spell that changes the cost of minions in your deck to 1. With this expansion and the Witchwood expansion, we've been seeing this sort of turn of trying to change Mage into this board / minion heavy type deck / class, rather than it being the aggro / burn style. I think if anything with Luna's Pocket Galaxy, it, for one, being a spell, you can discover it from Primordial Glyph. High-end roll on that one, but hey, it is something you can potentially make it to where it knocks down to 5. But playing this in your deck, period, for that matter, if you decide to, you're going to have it in your opening mulligan, so you could play it on 7 as early as possible, and you're not going to do too much to try and start drawing your cards. Because it changes the cost of the minions in your deck to 1. You have this, plus your new legendary minion that when you play your rightmost card, you get to start drawing cards from your deck a lot faster in a more tempo-oriented style. You start to just vomit things on board for 1. Big creatures, terrifying, scary creatures. And if anything, even if you do decide to go, you know what, I'm going to mulligan this back into my deck. If you want to play this with like a Spiteful Mage type deck in mind, the 6 cost, 7 cost, and 10 cost spells, or at least minions, aren't all terrible for pulling on Spiteful. Also, the fact that you can yank this out of your deck with the Raven that allows you to discover a spell and then put it into your hand if it costs more than what your opponent's does. This is something that you can just drop in, draw, and then just be able to get it earlier and faster. I honestly do think this sees play. I honestly think this makes a big / hand style mage a viable type thing. So maybe because of just the 2 new legendaries, we get to see a new mage archetype kind of creep up and crawl out of the woodwork. Bulb, do you have something to bust my chop with?
I think this sees play. This allows for a variety of different type of decks. I know there are different types of decks being discussed. You know, with how does this interact in elemental decks? What, you know, talk about what kind of decks, what kind of interactions you can kind of get with this. It's kind of really nutty, and it's a really nutty effect. There's a lot you can do. I know on my end, I've been contemplating making a Dragon Mage deck for a while, and I saw this and going, let's put this in the Dragon Mage deck idea, and all of a sudden I have 1 cost dragons. What you gonna do? And it's big, so it helps with that, and you can kind of put it into more of a big. It's like there's a lot you can do with this, and I think that's what makes it so exciting. Is that there actually is kind of some versatility to the decks you can create if you include this in your deck, and so that just makes you think how's the best way to incorporate this to a deck, and that's kind of the exciting kind of card design I want to see. When we're discussing cards, I want to see this, you know, where it has a specific use, but there's a lot of versatility in how you use it and how you put decks together. And you're going, what can I do with this? How can I put things together? And that's what I'm excited for, especially I think more in the legendary spells, because I think there's a lot more versatility there.
Mm-hmm.
Next up, we have Dr. Morrigan, which is an 8-cost 5/5 Warlock legendary with the Death Rattle. Swap this with a minion from your deck. It's different than, like, let's say, Malorn, because this is only going to stay alive and come back for you to redraw it if there's another minion in your deck, so you can swap it. There are some ideas about how you can kind of set things up so that you can kind of, you know, make copies, sit it in your deck, and then maybe when it dies, it switches with itself, and you can kind of do this endlessly. But that only works as long as there are minions in your deck. And again, I think to play this, I think this is kind of pricey. I mean, an 8 costs 5/5. I would either want the stat line, I think, to be a little bit more, or for this to be a little bit less. I mean, I'm not saying much. Like, maybe one in either direction. Like, maybe an 8 costs 6/6, or a 7 costs 5/5. It just feels too expensive. It just feels like it might not be worth it. And the fact that it's not going to be infinite like Malorn makes me go, okay, so what? It's an interesting effect that I just think because of the price and the stats, the price especially, I just don't think it's worth it as much. I think if this was like maybe one less, this might be more useful, but I just don't think it's going to see play.
Probably not. I mean, if anything, if even Shaman decides to go, alright, or not even Shaman, even Warlock decides to go, throw it in here just for, an 8 cost 5/5, just to be able to, like, swap bodies in and out. Because it's kind of like your Madame Goya, in a sense. But it's got Death Rattle and it keeps going back into the deck, and then it comes back out, and goes back into the deck, and then, it keeps swapping minions, and it's just like, realistically, no, I have to agree with you at this point. This thing just, unless someone decides to just go bonkers and make it useful, Dr. Morrigan really doesn't see too much play.
Well, because every single time you get it back, you have to replay it for 8 mana. That's a lot of mana. And yes, it can do some swapping and do this and that, but that's still 8 mana.
Yeah, the only other thing that I could think of that would remotely make this, like, even considerably good would be, like, for Wild, maybe, to where it's just like, okay, I'm gonna play Dr. Morrigan, like, a few times, and then N'Zoth, and have, like, a board full of Dr. Morrigans.
Which is all well and good, as long as you still have minions in your deck.
This is true, and this is fair. But, if anything, I'm not gonna get too wrapped up into that. I want to move on to Meterologist. 6 cost, 3/3, mage. Battle cry. For each card in your hand, deal 1 damage to a random enemy. Arena? Because if anything, like, as far as constructed goes, you've got a lot better cards to be able to mess with and muck with. Ball.
Yeah, I can agree with you there. It's like, while, especially with Luna's Pocket Galaxy, you might want to go more on the big side so that your hand's going to be full with Mage. And essentially a 6 cost pseudo arcane missiles-ish minion. I don't really think fits the bill, makes the cut, and does what you want. I want a deck that includes stuff like Luna's Pocket Galaxy, or anything with big spells that you want to do. I think Meteorologist is probably something you play in Arena. I don't think you play in Construction at all. Next up, we have Galvanizer, which is a 2 cost 1/2 mech with the battle cry: reduce the cost of mechs in your hand by 1. I think this is meta defining. I think this goes into every mech deck. Yes, it's not Mech Warper, but we were not going to get another Mech Warper because we have one in Wild and I don't need more of those. But I think this does a similar thing. It's a one shot, so you basically you play it when it's best. It's kind of like the Elemental and Shaman. You just reduce all the mechs that you have in your mech decks, and you now have cheaper, stronger, scarier mechs that you just play down. That you can use it with Magnetic, and I think Galvanizer is good for that. It's also a 1/2, so that basically after you reduce the cost of mechs, you might be able to then attach some of those reduced mechs to Galvanizer to make it more of a threat. So I do think that this is going to see play. I do think it's meta defining.
Look at this little green, cute turd robot just kind of like walking around like he's, like he's some big shot. Like, oh yeah, I know I'm big. Or at least I know I'm going to be useful. I know I'm going to be nice in either side of the metagame when it comes to standard or wild. Like, what up? I got a big green robot This little bugger is just, it's too good to not include in your mech decks. Like I said, on either side of the board at this point. Just being able to go, alright, I reduce the cost of mechs in your hand by 1 for 2. And then you've got something like Mech Warper that you can throw down on the board, which reduces it again with everything in your hand by 1. You can just start vomiting out cheap mechs onto the board. And it's just like the board's flooded and you gotta pray your opponent doesn't have a board wipe or board nuke to just go, well, that screwed that plan in the butt, but if anything, it's good. Even if you discover it to be able to make things cheaper in your hand by 1, it's still really, really good. Next up, we have the Stormbringer. It's 7 cost Shaman Legendary spell. Transform your minions into random legendary minions. Now, I figure this card, because of how it's worded and how it's potentially going to work, I figure that's going to be transform your minions that are on the board.
It is. What I did is I went and I compared the wording of this card to the wording of Evolve, and the wording's exactly the same. So it's essentially, a legendary Evolve.
Alright, so if anything, the first thing that you have to think about when it comes to the Stormbringer and building your deck around the Stormbringer, you're going to play it. You have to think about how you're going to keep tokens or little things like that on the board. Now, if anything, the Stormbringer could potentially declaw or at least make it to where those little 1/1s with little 1/1 sparks with rush not as bad anymore. Because if you can generate a somewhat good or at least decent board and then just go, screw it, I can play the Stormbringer now. Those little 1/1 sparks that were so bad and just so terrible beforehand now become legendary minions. And it's like, oh, depending on the legendary minion they transform into, it could be really useful. I think they're trying to shift away from that Shutterwalk Shaman deck and make it to where Token Shaman comes back, or at least Evolve Shaman comes back into play. I like the idea of it. Like, I like the idea of it in Standard, I like the idea of it in Wild, and it's just like, I want to see what the Stormbringer actively brings. So, Stormbringer, bring it on to me! And Ballbite, kick this in your direction.
I think you need to treat this card essentially like a pseudo-evolve. This is a legendary evolve. It's going to evolve your minions all into legendary minions. I do not agree with Eddie. I don't think that the Sparks will be able to stay on board long enough or be important long enough to be evolved by the Stormbringer, just because of how early a lot of these are. And the fact that they have Rush, which means they're probably either going to run themselves into minions if you are playing them, which I don't think you are, or if they do stay on the board, your opponent is going to easily be able to wipe them out. Pretty much, I think you're just playing a normal game. Probably something that's just you're generating a lot of because Shaman's able to do this is you're playing a very minion-centric board game. You're able to flood the board a lot very easily, and you just get a good sized board like you used to. Stormbringer, you now have legendaries, and yes, there are not as many quote unquote good legendaries as are like overpowering legendaries, but there still are a good amount. And I do think that you probably are going to end up more often than not with a better board than what you ended up starting with. So I think that you do need to take it that it's like any Evolve, when you were playing Evolve, any evolution could go wrong, but more often than not, you were betting on it to kind of end up being better for you. And I think that's where you're going with the Stormbringer. It's a legendary type of evolution. And now if you then want to Stormbringer, and then off of that you use something like Unstable Evolution, or if you're using The Thrall, if you're using the Death Knight, you can kind of evolve that way. But I think that's how you have to treat it. You have to treat it more like it's going to an evolve deck. I think that's very interesting. I'm not sure whether you were going to see much of it in Standard, but I think in Wild, I think evolve decks might shuffle it into the repertoire. We'll have to see. Next up, we have Prismatic Lens, which is a 4-cost Paladin spell with the effect draw a minion and a spell from your deck, swap their costs. This could be very good. Number one, you're drawing both a minion and a spell. It just depends on what you're looking for, and this could make that more expensive spell or minion that you're looking for cheaper, so you can play them, or it can make that really cheap minion or spell that you want really expensive. But number one, you're gonna have to look at it as you're getting very specific card draw, and number two, you're probably hoping to discount something very specific, whether it's a minion or a spell, to further your game plan. I think depending on what kind of deck is being run, I think this might see play. Other than that, I'm not sure.
Alright. I'm going to take a look at it through my own kind of, not a prismatic lens, but my own kind of, like, I look at this and I go, okay, I could potentially see, like, 1-cost spells that are actively useful, for that matter. Your secrets, your, it gives 3 attack to a minion. You get, like, a 4-cost, like, your Blessing of Kings. And then it's just like, alright, and now look at the high-end side of things as far as your minions go. Like, do you want to take this to a high road side of things where you can maybe make your Tyrion Ford Ring cost 4, or your Sunkeeper Tarum costs less, which would be incredibly nice. Like, being able to just go, alright, I'm going to vomit stuff on the board and then tear them for 1. What's up? You've got to build around this. Like, that's the only thing you can do. And I think, realistically, you probably only include, like, 1 copy of it, because if you try to include 2, you're gonna be potentially swapping, you know, like, Prismatic Lens's cost with another cost in your deck, and you may not want that to be the thing that you go and fight and die your hill on, so to speak. So, Bulb? Any last thoughts on that?
No.
Okay. So, if anything, next up we have Subject 9. 5 costs, 4/4, neutral legendary with a battle cry. Draw 5 different secrets from your deck. If you're looking at this, and you're going, you know, I love my secret deck. So I'm gonna play Subject 9. If anything, the big thing that I see in this, because it's a beast with a beast tag, I see this going into Hunter. At the same time, because, like, Mage already has its thing with Arcanologist. So it doesn't need to be able to draw all that good jazz, all the good secret. Because it'll just pull 1, and then it'll start to speedrun pulling its secrets with, like, Aluneth. So, I think, if anything, this little bugger would see play in Hunter more so than any other class. Because Rogue only has 3 secrets. Paladin would be another thought that comes to mind, but if anything, like, I'm looking at Wild and I go, you have Mysterious Challenger, so you're not going to put Subject 5 into the deck there. Standard, there's not really enough secrets to garner subject 5 being played in Paladin. And then, like I said, Mage has already got its thing taken care of. Hunter doesn't have a where it can just yank secrets, so that's the only logical place I can kind of deduce it going. Paul.
I mean, you're kind of right all along the board. Secret Paladin is kind of covered in wild. Mage has multiple ways to get secrets. They're not really concerned about it. I mean, like you said, maybe Hunter, but mainly the big Hunter decks that want to basically run secrets tend to be Spell Hunter, which doesn't want to run Subject 9. I'm not sure if Subject 9 finds a home at all. It's a little bit weak stat-wise, and you have to be running a lot of secrets. Is that enough for Subject 9? I don't think Secret Hunter by itself outside of Spell has enough to really work with like it used to before rotation. So I don't really think Subject 9 works there. Like maybe in Wild, if you're more going for a focus on secrets with minions, maybe you use Subject 9 and then combine that with the other Hunter minion, so that you have all those cost 0. But no, I'm not really sure that I don't think this really goes in standard either. I think that that a Hunter deck that runs secrets in standard probably is going to stick with Spell Hunter. I think if this finds a place in a Secret Hunter at all, it will probably be in Wild. But even then, I'm kind of skeptical. Next up, we have Dyn-O-Matic, which is a 5-cost 3/4 warrior mech with the battle cry. Deal 5 damage randomly split among all minions except mechs. That's actually another reason why I was kind of skeptical about Missile Launcher, because I just think this is better. If you are running a warrior mech deck, this is great because essentially you're going to damage pretty much your opponent's minions, because most of your minions, if not all your minions, are going to be mechs. You just plop down Dyn-O-Matic and it just shoots over at your opponent's side of the board. It essentially becomes Cinder Missiles or whatever those are.
Cinderstorm.
It becomes Cinderstorm. Basically, it's a Cinderstorm attached to a body at your opponent's minions. Boom. If you're going up against another mech deck, it's not so great. So there's that. But if your opponent's not running mechs, I mean, this is pretty good. So yeah, I think Mech Warrior probably runs this.
Oh, no doubt in my mind. I mean, especially going up against, like, because I still feel that Baku Paladin is going to be around, and things like Oddbro and Zoo are going to stick around for a good bit. So Dyn-O-Matic is that card that just kind of hits the board and just goes, all right, blip, 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 hopefully getting rid of your opponent's crap. So I think it's a strong card. If anything, you start to magnetic stuff to it. It's really nice as well. So definitely stays around and sees play. Do we have time for one more?
Yeah.
All right. So if anything, we go to Bronze Gatekeeper. 3 cost, 1/5 mech with magnetic and taunt. It's a neutral, and it's really, really good. I'm not even gonna lie. Like, this is something that you're gonna see just kind of thrown out there and played in just about every mech deck that you can think of, whether it be standard, whether it be wild, whatever. This is a meta-defining neutral card. So, Bob, I kick it to you.
I'm running a mech deck, and I want a mech that I really like to have taunt. Plop. Or I just need a taunt. Plop. It's good, it's versatile. More than likely you're going to be attaching this to a mech to give it taunt and make it a bigger taunt. Make it something that's a bit beefier, a bit more difficult to deal with. I think this is an incredibly good card. I think this is going to see play in pretty much every mech deck. And I'm kind of excited to play it myself. All right. Anyway, that's about all the time we have. We will be putting out some more of these, so look forward to tomorrow's to more of our thoughts on the cards. And guys, next time.